Now, can you imagine writing exams or simply learning in a classroom that's falling apart around you, or where there are no proper sanitation or toilets available? Well, many children across South Africa live that reality every single day. The lack of proper school infrastructure infringes on basic human rights, the right to education and the right to feel safe. So what is the solution? Let's discuss this now with Dr. Milandre Vlok. She's a lecturer in foundation phase education at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, CPUT. Dr. Vlok, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for talking to us. Here on eNCA, we're focusing on the challenges that infrastructure are causing, especially in our public schools. From your experience, what is the biggest impact of this bad infrastructure?
I think, Dan, that it affects the holistic development of learners and the passion and the enthusiasm that teachers should have in the classrooms. The bad infrastructure affects all aspects of children's development.
And would it affect performance as well, and might lead to dropout rates, and also maybe because the teachers now are lacking the passion, as you say, they might not be retained in the schools?
Yes, absolutely. It does impact performance because it impacts every aspect of a child's development. Physical development, mental development, emotional development, and I would want to go so far, even spiritual development. Children cannot learn where the infrastructure is not conducive to learning. They cannot explore, they cannot be curious, where they don't feel safe to do so. And that is part of learning.
Yeah, I mean, you think of infrastructure not just as a building or as a window or a door. You think of school infrastructure as a library, as a laboratory, as a sporting field. Absolutely.
It's everywhere where children should be free to play. And lack of infrastructure is really infringing on the rights of children. If we look at the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, children have a right to feel safe. They have a right to be placed somewhere away from home where they find they have care and protection and a healthy environment. And if that is lacking, it is against their rights. Where there is not clean water for them to drink, where it's just not safe, it is against their right to the best possible environment in which they can learn. So it infringes on every aspect of their right to education.
And yet we hear the Department of Basic Education saying now and again they are working very hard to resolve some of these problems. But besides the backlog, they also face with vandalism. So communities in many parts of South Africa have people in them who are criminals, who are thugs, who target the school infrastructure.
Yes, absolutely. We speak about a concept in education in locus parentis. That means that the educators are in the place of the child's parents. And where there is corruption, where there is violence in the schools, where there is corporal punishment, where teachers or children are not feeling safe, it creates a space where no one feels safe. So the concept of in locus parentis, in the place of the parent, is actually I want to say vandalized.
Yeah, and I mean the foundation phase is very important, and you are an expert in foundation phase education. In my mind, that talks from your grades 1 up to maybe grade 3. It's a very important time, and besides the point you've made that children have to feel safe, and also the fact that the teacher is in the place of their parents when they are in class, what are other key aspects that the infrastructure must provide to the foundation phase in particular?
Well, I think what is very important is that we should look at learner-educator ratios, which in a way is not really well, it is infrastructure, but it's that it hasn't got to do with the buildings. It's got to do with the space. When I assess student teachers in schools where the classrooms have got 45 to 50 children, there's no space for carpet work. Children are not able to move around freely. And in the foundation phase, that is so important, that children have a space where they can be creative, they can do art, they can do movement, which is part of their holistic development. Socializing is so important, especially in the foundation phase. And again, if there is not a safe space for them inside the classroom, not enough space, that also impacts on the way that they socialize and develop and are creative. And foundation phase is where we lay the groundwork for their development. So, infrastructure.
Yeah, no,
So
I mean, you
important.
talk about space. I mean, we forget that children have to run around and play. They've been given that freedom. But also the walls, I mean, you talk about the building, they have to be decorated in a way that inspires children's imaginations.
Absolutely. I tell my students that they have to keep creating the joy of learning in their classrooms. And I talk about print-rich environments where there are posters on the walls, there are word cards, there are where the seasons are presented, and the days of the week are put up. And if the walls are cracked and not painted, it's very difficult to create that aesthetic learning. We also talk about the environment as the third teacher. It's a concept that comes from the Reggio Emilia approach, which is an educational approach. So not only is the teacher the teacher, the environment, the aesthetic environment is also the third teacher. And all of that creates an atmosphere that wants to invite learning. But if the infrastructure in all aspects are lacking, then that aesthetic place and space is not there. And it impacts children, it impacts them.
Yeah, Dr. Vlok, it impacts them now by robbing them of those wonderful opportunities, you say, to learn in a joyful manner, which they have a right to as children in our schools, public schools. But what damage is it doing to them for their future?
Well, I think, a joy of learning is something that is laid in the foundation phase, that joy of learning. And if children do not find that joy of learning when they are still young, it impacts their motivation, their inspiration, their creativity, their ability to problem solve. All of that impacts their development at a later stage. So it has to start at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said about the importance of good infrastructure, which therefore also impacts on the learning environment, not just as in the physical spaces, but also in inspiring the young ones for the future. So are we failing the future generations of our children by not making sure they've got the right infrastructure, Dr. Vlok?
I definitely think we are, but then I have to really honor and commend the educators who are working in very challenging environments and giving their best. And in spite of the infrastructure, making sure that children do still learn. But it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of motivation. And in a previous interview, I realized how challenged teachers are in terms of their social, emotional well-being. And that is also impacted by the lack of infrastructure. So yes, I agree with you. We are failing them.
Thank you very much. That's Dr. Milandre Vlok. Thanks for your time this afternoon today here on eNCA. She's, of course, a lecturer in foundation phase education at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, just as we focus here on the issue of the dilapidated infrastructure of public schools and how that is affecting the pupils.